Thank you very much. Now we're going to be moving on to the big debate, where we're going to continue with this session around affordable housing. And interestingly, we have brought people from not just the government, but we've brought the private sector as well. We've brought professionals and the community all together to tackle this huge challenge, or discuss how we can tackle this huge challenge. Okay, so Tayo Odunsi, Chief Executive Officer of North Court, is represented by Osage Alfred, Director, Real Estate Management Services at North Court. He will be moderating the panel, so can we ask him to come forward, please, first of all, and a round of applause for him as he makes his way up. And then we're also going to have Jide Odusholu, CEO, OPIC. Thank you very much. Tosin Oshinowa, she's an architect, she's here as well. Thank you, Tosin. Kennedy Okonkwo, Managing Director, Netcom Oaks, Nigeria. I think we might need one more chair, by the way. Can someone bring up another chair? Can you please get another chair? We need one more chair. Because I think we have 2 more people, right? Yes. And Rogba Orimalade, Chairman, Knives, Lagos State Branch, Nigeria. A round of applause for him as well, please. Thank you. But we need a chair for him. All right, over to you. We want this to be a debate, lively debate, please. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome. Just to introduce ourselves once again and to clarify, if we could call her by our first name. My name is Osage Alfred. So I would want us to introduce ourselves and tell us the name you prefer to be called from our far left.
That's it. My name is Dr. Kennedy Okonkwo. I'm the CEO of Netcom Oaks Limited.
Okay. You prefer to be called Kennedy. Are you okay if I call you Kennedy? Okay.
My name is Jide Odusholu, Managing Director of Odunsi Property Investment Corporation. You can call me Jide.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Tosin Oshinowa. I'm an architect. I run CM Design Atelier, and you can call me Tosin.
Okay.
I'm Balogu Muritala. I'm a town planner.
Okay.
You can call me Muritala.
Muritala.
You can call me Rogba. I'm the chairman of Naive's Lagos State Branch.
Okay, so just to get it started, interestingly, this is a topic that every week or every day you see in magazines. And I had some questions prepared, but then I appreciate the fact that Lagos State has started by telling us what their strategic direction is as regards affordable housing, which we would later drill down. So, but to start off this session, I would want Mr. Jide to give us his experience about affordable housing and housing delivery in Ogun State, because I know he has worked well in the Ogun State.
Well, thanks. So, when we talk about affordable housing, we all typically have the challenge of, are we talking social housing or affordable housing? I love what Muritala had said, where he differentiated it. To me, when you talk about affordable housing, you're talking about ease of purchase. Making the house affordable means making it price efficient, making it attractive to the market, and making it easy for the end buyers to own such homes. Now, in OPIC, we're government owned, even though we're a development corporation. One of the first challenges we had was to define what people actually even found appealing in the first instance. And we did a trial where we had bungalows, where we had apartments, where we had duplexes, and we found out very quickly that if you dimension the market, basically people are price sensitive, okay, but people are also aspirational. So people want the best value they can possibly get at the lowest possible cost. Now, if you're going to deliver quality housing, it means, and you're not going to cheat, it means you've got to get your infrastructure right, you've got to get your location right, and you've got to get your market targeting right. So those are the things we have to focus on, and we very quickly realized that the sweet spot, when you talk about affordable housing, anything between the price of, if you're using Naira, 5 million to maximum 20 million Naira. If you go above that, most people can't really afford to buy it. And of course, you've got to do it in such a way that there's flexibility in the terms of purchase. So invariably, you have a lot of inbuilt subsidies that you have to provide. Now, subsidy in this case does not mean you're making it free. It just means you're making the pain of purchase lower. So you allow people of timeline within which they can afford to buy into these homes. But most importantly is getting your locations right, because we surround Lagos. And I was laughing when he was talking about 28 million people in Lagos. And I was telling Mr. Ogundimu who was beside me that he's actually talking about Greater Lagos. They call it Greater Lagos. But really when they say Lagos in that case, they're talking of Lagos and Ogun. Because the bulk of those 28 million people actually live on the border towns. And so when we look at that, we always have to ask ourselves, how do we create homes that are attractive enough and provide the support systems for it? It's quite challenging. But those are the 4 key things we focus on: getting the land right, getting the infrastructure right, getting the pricing right to make it affordable.
Okay, thank you very much. There have been several definitions about affordable housing. Some school of thought says 30%. Some measure affordable housing from residual income perspective. So this question goes to Rogba. So what definitions or form of measurement do we have, and is there any perfect way of measuring affordable housing?
Okay. I don't know why you're asking me this question, Osage. Oh boy. Okay, the internet will be interesting today. The truth of the matter is this. About a month ago, I was sitting down somewhere like this, and someone quite renowned in the industry is even arguing about this word called affordable in the first place. That is it right to use that word affordable? Because if you look at it in a certain context, if I'm worth $1 billion, if I'm valued $1 billion, and I can afford to buy a house of 500, say maybe 100 million, is that house affordable? If we use that term. So that person is affordable. So I'm not going to go into any legalese or what have you. What I'll just say is that, for me, let's look at affordable in a way in which, close to what Jide is saying, which is where people that form a certain bracket, lower, I'm not even looking at the middle, slightly lower than the middle class, not the middle class, low income coming up a bit, around those people that, I believe that's the target, that's what we're looking at. Those people that are barely, they form the majority at the end of the day. Those people that are barely making way every day, every month to even pay their rents. Those are the people we're targeting that falls into that category. I don't want to go into definitions and all that stuff. So that's why I said I don't know why you asked me that question, but I think I've tried to answer it the best way I can. Okay. I think we should just categorize it from the angle of affordable on the low level and coming up just before the middle class, if there's really a middle class right now.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's just actually to bring everybody together so that as the discussion progresses, we are speaking from the same metric and language. So looking at that explanation, then we can actually say our discussion around affordable housing is for low-income earners, is for senior citizens that are on retirement basis, they are living in their own homes or probably rental homes, and they are using their pension fund as means of paying rent. Some divorce, some single parents. So having everybody in that category then form that bit of people that need affordable housing, technically. So Kennedy, is this part of the market a viable market to developers?
Okay, thank you very much for the question you just asked. Affordability is relative. Depends on what your social status is, like he just said. Now, we should be asking ourselves, who are the people that need affordable housing? I'd like to deviate from using the term affordable. We should be talking about social housing, because that's what is regarded as in more advanced parts of the world. Social housing in the sense that somebody just came out of school, he hasn't gotten a good job, he doesn't have accommodation, and the society expects him to marry, and when he gets married, where will he migrate to? The man who retired from the civil service and his pension cannot take him anywhere, his pension cannot even afford to buy him medication, he expects to be housed under a roof. So, to the government, I feel there is a misalignment of interests, because where government wants to do joint venture and what government is actually offering the developer is something that is commercial in outlook, something that is competitive. You expect government wants to make some money out of it. Government is not giving that land out so that the developer would build and sell at below market price, because that is what the man who does not have any means of sustaining himself expects to get. He expects to get a form of social housing that will be given at below market price. Now, for the man who is retired, you don't expect him to be buying a house at a competitive rate. The man used to live in Ikoyi, and by the time he's retiring, he realized that he cannot afford to buy the house where he served all his life. So he expects to get a place outskirts of the town or somewhere not so far away at a very significantly reduced rate. So if government and the developers, because the truth is, if the developers are to do social housing, it is not viable, because where developers are borrowing money at double digits, 22% to 28%, at times to 30%, how can I do a house and be selling below commercial rate? So, but where government comes and says, we are going to support what you are doing. We know you have the skill, you have the capacity, you have the means to efficiently run a model that can produce houses at this speed. If we give you land, what we expect from you is that there should be a benchmark price. And then when we give that benchmark price, we are also going to give you an exclusive list of people that can actually benefit from such housing programs. That is my contribution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tosin, so looking at the delivery of affordable housing, from design perspective, are there special features that affordable houses should have? Are there specific locations? Are there specific requirements that would be needed to deliver such houses?
I think when we, again, as everyone has said, this idea of affordable, I think also the end user needs to change their understanding of, or their perception through lifestyle of what they can actually afford. Right now, as an architect, it's not uncommon when you get a project that people say all the bedrooms should be en suite. Can you really afford en suite? As the developer is calculating his cost for build, where have we all of a sudden decided or understood that everyone should have air conditioning? Do we really need it?
That is the aim. And that is how we are trying to craft the legislation to back it up. That is one. The other aspect that has been mentioned, we have experiences from other climes. And that was why in the city housing scheme, we are looking at what we call the transit corridors, where we're going to develop high-rise buildings for the citizen. But we have a challenge. The challenge has to do with our current level of infrastructure. If you look at the BRT corridors, look at Mile 12, look at Fadi and some other locations like that. We have identified for Mile 12 locations where we want to develop high-rise buildings. But we have that challenge of infrastructure. You cannot have high-rise buildings without adequate power. And it becomes, if you have to develop it, it means it's no longer affordable for the target citizen in the state. If you're going to have a house that's going to be powered by generator, you have to buy this, you have to do all that, it means the low-income group cannot afford it. That's the reality on ground. So what government is trying to do is to get the private sector involved. And that is why we are doing our segmentation of income. For the city, where we're going to develop high-rise buildings, certain percentage, like I said, will be for social housing. There's going to be a mandatory provision of certain percentage of that unit for social housing. While the man who has brought his money, he's getting money from the banks at 20, 30% interest, he has to recoup his income and he must make profit from that business. But however, the law is to make provision under the housing policy. That certain percentage of that unit, if you have to do it in Lagos State, you must give that for social housing. That's really.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roba, based on what he has said, we know over time we've had rent edicts, we've had some laws, and they've been institutionalized. But in practical sense, the follow-through process of implementation, there's always this gap. So I would like to ask you from a professional perspective, do you see, what would you want to see in the system that would make you believe that a housing policy that will be enacted or a program that will be suggested by government is going to see several decades?
Okay. I'm going to be a bit critical of government this time. Because I think that's why we're here, and it's constructive criticism. I've seen what you've put up, but I wish there was more engagement by the players in the built environment. I'm talking about not just institutions. Why am I saying this? And I'm going to be very straightforward and very practical here. Then I'll just wrap up to what you said. You talked about the joint venture, and you talked about how you will bring land, and the word you used was facilitate the approvals. From my own little experience over a decade in real estate, close to 10 to 15% of the overall cost of building anything to a bungalow, it's not even talking about the block. Approvals, cost of all that chain before you start talking of block. Why can't government rope all that and factor it in just like how you're factoring land? By the time you do that, the exposure financially to whoever is going to start building is very low. I'm just hitting that based on what you've put up. And that's why I said if there was, it's fantastic. We have to give Lagos State government some credit, but I just feel there should have been a bit more engagement before we came here. But going to straight for what you're saying, there are three components when you talk of building any property. One is land. Second is the materials. Third is finance. Before you do the two, which is finance and the materials, it's land. Who owns the land? By virtue of the Land Use Act, all land is vested in the state government. Am I right? Or has it changed? Good. So no matter what we say here, no matter the developer that comes to do charity, it boils down to government, and it boils down to the overall drive and policy of government when it has to do with utilization of land. As long as land remains as a gold and not subsidized to feed what Mr. Kennedy has said, yes, you can call it social housing, whatever, but to feed the developers that can now come in and be able to take on and build for the populace. We are going to be talking year in, year out on this. So for me, that is talking about from the policy angle and general direction. Secondly, and I feel this point is very important, you talked about infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just about, I understand what you're saying about high rises, and I'm going to give a very practical example here. Looking at the majority of the faces that are here, I see a lot of people that live on the axis. At least I know of 10 people here that stay in Lekki Phase 1. There is a coastal road, which I think from the time I don't know how old I was, when I was entering university, I heard about. And at that time, we saw developments coming up along the Lekki corridor, which has one road. For those that live in Lekki Phase 1 now, a room boys quarter, one room boys quarter can rent for as high as 800,000, if not even 1 million. One room. Why must that be? So in terms of infrastructure, again, going back to policy, if government can open up road networks through the coastal roads and other areas, there's no reason why developers and other people can take position further down. We're all exposed. We've all been to London and all of that. It's not everybody that lives on Oxford Street or close to Oxford Street. So I'm just chipping that in terms of policy.
All right, thank you very much. So just on a final note, Mr. Jide, please. Housing delivery is obvious to everybody that government is central to delivery of affordable housing. And in recent times, we've been having state government contest minimum wage. We've had state government try to grow their IGR. So having been burdened by these two perspectives to the economy, how can they find a balance in providing affordable housing?
Well, let's start from this. Robert said something, that the paradigm of seeing land as gold has to change. The unfortunate truth is that it won't. Because every government, and then it followed by saying they should build coastal road. To build a kilometer of road, you need at least $500 million at the absolute minimum. If you're going to build a grade A road, you will spend at least 2.5 billion per kilometer, especially in a place like Lagos. They've got to fund it. So you see, the paradigm that works, and that's what we've tried to do in Ogun State. For instance, we have a project called New Market City. It is commercial. It's 100% commercial. It's 750 hectares. What we did was to dimension it, which is what Kennedy was alluding to also. So in dimensioning it, we had sections where we knew we were going to make our money from commercial off-takers. We had sections that we set aside for developing affordable housing. Now, we are building vertically.
So, sorry, I would like you to just round up in
I'm
just
going
1
to.
minute.
We're building vertically because you cannot afford to build. You can't spread. It's not affordable. So, in order to make housing affordable, everything has to come together. But it will require all parties to put skin in the game.
Okay.
I think we should bring in the audience because I have a feeling that a few people will want to contribute to this conversation. But interesting comments, especially in regards to land. So we need the land, we need the materials, and financing. Financing is key as well. Okay, let's hear your question.
Okay. Hello. Hello. My name is Matthew Badin. I'm the publisher of Property Broker International magazine. My question goes to the Mr. Motara concerning your presentation. I think actually it was a very great presentation. But I believe in part of this world, implementation is always a bottleneck when we have a good idea. And if you agree with me, I don't know whether you are going to have what we call a public hearing concerning this your presentation before you present it to the House of Assembly, for people to actually have input in terms of implementation. And having said that, infrastructure, you didn't talk about infrastructure in your presentation. I think it's very critical and very, very important for human existence. For those people who live in the urban area to have what we call road network to get to their destination. You will agree with me, 80% of the people that work in Ireland, they live in Ogun State and somewhere in Ekpe. And it took them 5 to 3 hours in the morning and at night for them to get to their destination. I don't know what is going to be your strategy so that people that live in this suburbs town will have a sense of belonging. Thank you.
Okay. Can you answer that first? And then
Okay, thank you. Your observation is quite right. And the issue of infrastructure does not end on the table of Ministry of Housing. It's a statewide issue, and it affects both the state and the federal government. And it's a fact that those who work in Lagos stay in the whole state. And that is one of the areas of concern to the state government. In fact, it is what is informing our transit corridor development. Even in our secretariat in Alausa, most of the staff, they don't stay in Lagos, and it's a major concern. However, for infrastructural development, it requires serious capital outlay that we are all aware of. And there is limit to budgetary provision in the state. It is true that the state has increased its IDR, but there are so many challenges to be addressed simultaneously. And you look at what the current government is doing, trying to do road infrastructure. Even if we continue to spend the total budget of the state on developing what is required to be done on road infrastructure, we won't be able to meet up in the next 10 years. That's the reality. But I'm aware, like Mr. Jide said earlier, that the Lagos Mega City program goes beyond the boundary of Lagos State. And if that program and the plan that has been implemented to the letter, maybe we will not be where we are today. I'm aware of the master plan for the Lagos Mega City that cross up to Ota, Ifo, in Ogun State. And there is need for what I call synergy in our infrastructure development. Our focus should be to reducing what I call road infrastructure. I think we should go beyond that. In civilized climes, we have mass transit trains that works, and that should be our area of target. That can move people en masse from Ibadan to Lagos within 30 minutes, you are in your workplace. It has happened in other nations. We can do it, but it depends on the focus of government and the trust of what government intends to do. Thank you.
I think we might only have one more question, but remember we are still continuing this conversation throughout the afternoon, so there will be time to take in some more. Okay?
Okay, I'm just going to make a comment. My name is Roland. I think that when it comes to affordability, I think my comment would be that a lot of us who approach government to do PPPs should go there with a lot of sincerity and honesty. And this is why I say this. Affordability is measured by several methods, but the two popular ones are housing expenditure to income and then residual income. Residual income meaning, what is left for you to be able to buy the house. Or if you take away all your expenses, what is the ratio of your expenses to the house? So if government comes up with a project and you know it would not work, why do you continue to do that project? You see Lagos homes abandoned all over Lagos. So again, it comes to my point. If affordable housing is going to work in this country, it has to have some sort of executive interest. At the state level, the governor must be ready to drive housing. At the federal level, the president must be ready to drive housing. The reason why you see UK, Thailand, Malaysia, and all of those guys have GDPs in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70 to housing means that the turnover for that country, it's 70, 80% to real estate. So I think that's my comment, and I just wanted to drive that home. Thank you.
Okay, and this gentleman over here actually wanted to ask, will there be a public hearing for the presentation that you made? Yes or no?
Yes, there will be.
Okay. Okay, does anyone want to say anything in response to that comment?
Hello?
All right, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for our panelists and our moderator. We will be continuing this conversation on affordable housing because at the end of the day, we want houses that are affordable, but we need funding. So the government needs funding. Is it just all about the government? Is it fully the responsibility of the government? Should the private sector come in? How can we mobilize private public and developmental funding? That's the next question that we're going to be answering. So a round of applause for our panelists as they make their way down. Thank you very much. So in other words, we're still continuing the conversation. So we know what the issues are, but the question is, how do we make this work?